Morning all. All right, so we're up to the 1971-1972 season. As you can see, we're still at 14 teams. It's about to become 16 the following season. And as you can see as well, despite finishing first, Boston wins. So Boston 54-13-11 overall, 119 points, 330 goals scored, 204 goals against under coach Tom Johnson. The New York Rangers are second, impressive record of 48-17-13, 109 points, 317 goals scored, 192 goals against. The Canadiens are third in the division, 46-16-16, so 108 points for them, 307 goals scored, 205 goals against. The Toronto Maple Leafs do make the playoffs, 33-31-14 record, 209 goals scored, 208 goals against. 80 points for them under coach John McClellan, and of course Montreal's under Scotty Bowman at that point. The Detroit Red Wings, as they continue to go through some stuff, 33-35-10 record, 76 points, 261 goals scored, 262 goals against. They do switch coaches during the season. They go 3-8 under Doug Berkeley, and then Johnny Wilson takes over and goes 30-27-10. The Buffalo Sabres finished 16-43-19, and they have three different coaches behind the bench during that season. They finished with 51 points, 203 goals scored, 289 goals against. Punch Imlock, 8-23-10 record before being replaced by Floyd Smith for one game, and then Joe Crozier takes over. He goes 8-19-9, so it didn't matter who was behind the bench. Buffalo wasn't winning. The Vancouver Canucks 20-50-8 under coach Hal Layco, so 48 points for them, and a last place finish in the National Hockey League. 203 goals scored, 297 goals against. And then in the Western Division, that's right, Vancouver's still in the Eastern Division, because why not? Why not have Vancouver in the East? In the West, Chicago, which is clearly farther west than Vancouver, they finished 46-17-15, 107 points to lead the Western Division. 256 goals scored, 166 goals against. Billy Ray is still the coach there. Minnesota under coach Jack Gordon goes 37-29-12, 86 points. 212 goals scored, 191 goals against. The St. Louis Blues, they're going through some stuff that year too. 28-39-11 record for 67 points, 208 goals scored, 247 goals against. Sid Abel goes 3-6-1 behind the bench. Bill McCreary goes 6-14-4, and then Al Arbor, who's going to be a pretty darn good coach at the NHL level, 19-19-6. So he gets that ship righted. Red Kelly coaching the Pittsburgh Penguins. They have 66 points that year, record of 26-38-14, 220 goals scored, 258 goals against. The Philadelphia Flyers finished just below the playoff line due to goals scored. They have the exact same record as Pittsburgh, 26-38-14 for 66 points, 200 goals scored, 236 goals against. They're coached by Fred Shero, so you know things are about to get better. The Seals, things are just awful for the Seals. 21-39-18 record for 60 points, 216 goals scored, 288 goals against. Fred Glover gets fired. He goes 0-1-2 before that. Vic Stasiuk takes over. He has a record of 21-38-16 as their coach. The LA Kings finished behind the Seals with 49 points and a record of 20-49-9. 206 goals scored, 305 goals against. Larry Regan, 2-7-1 record for him. Fred Glover takes over, and we'll talk about him when we get to this part of the board. 18-42-8 record for Fred Glover after taking over the LA Kings. So the Rangers are having a good time right now, and their goal a game line finishes 3-4-5 in scoring. That's Rattel, Hadfield, and Gilbert. Ken Dryden does something unusual. After he wins the Conn Smythe, he wins the Calder, because he'd only played 6 regular season games the season before, so he's still qualified as a rookie, and so he's Rookie of the Year after winning the Conn Smythe for MVP in the playoffs. There are 9 40-goal scorers in the NHL that year. That is a record. Scoring is going up, and it will continue to go up, of course, as we get towards the 80s. March 4th of 1972, the Sabres trade Eddie Shack to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Rene Robert, who would become part of the French Connection in the Buffalo Sabres organization. March 4th yeah, that's the one I just read. March 8th of 1972, however, the Bruins set a record with 8 straight road wins. So that's a pretty good record right there. March 22nd of 1972, Marcel Dion sets a rookie record with 75 points, and he'd keep going. Marcel Dion, of course, turns out to be a pretty darn good player in his own right. March 25th of 1972, Jerry Cheevers sets a record with a 32-game unbeaten streak. It would end at 33 games. But yeah, pretty strong unbeaten streak for Jerry Cheevers. October 31st of 1972, Fred Glover becomes the first coach to appear behind the bench for 2 different teams in the same season. LA hired him 12 days after the Seals fired him, so he wasn't out of work for 2 weeks. February 10th of 1972, Guy Lafleur records his 3rd hat trick and modern rookie record, but because of the fact that he's in the lineup in place of Jean Beliveau, who retired the year before, Montreal's not that impressed with Guy Lafleur and talks about how he's kind of a disappointment that first year because Montreal fans ridiculous at this stage. February 19th of 1972, Phil Esposito is the first NHL player to record his 3rd 100-point season. So pretty strong numbers from Phil Esposito. May 5th of 1972, Bobby Orr is the first to win the Hart Trophy 3 times in a row. So the award's handed out May 5th. Now they're awarded like right near the end of June. So anyways, NHL expansion to Atlanta and Long Island is announced, and it's seen as a response to the WHA formation. So where the expansion teams that are in the league at this point, there was a long process to get them through and vet them and make sure that this was going to work. In the case of Atlanta and Long Island, it was slapped together relatively quickly. So again, it's something the NHL always needs to think about when they're going to expand, and I think that continues to this day. Have a plan and make sure that you take your time. You don't rush it, because when they rush these expansions, that's when they tend to not work. The Hart Trophy that year goes to Bobby Orr of the Bruins. The Art Ross goes to Phil Esposito of the Bruins. The Calder goes to Ken Dryden of the Montreal Canadiens. The Norris, of course, goes to Bobby Orr, again, of the Boston Bruins. The Conn Smythe goes to Bobby Orr of the Boston Bruins. The Lady Byng goes to Jean Ratelle of the New York Rangers. And Jean Ratelle wins the Lester Pearson Award as well. So the players voting saying he's the best player in the league that year. And the Masterton goes to Bobby Clarke of the Philadelphia Flyers, a little bit younger than your usual Masterton winner there. And the Vezina goes to the Chicago tandem of Tony Esposito and Gary Suitcase Smith. The All-Stars in the league that year, so your first and second team All-Stars. Down the middle, Phil Esposito of the Bruins, his first team. Jean Ratelle of the New York Rangers, second team. On the right side, Rod Gilbert of the Rangers, his first team. Yvon Cournoyer of the Montreal Canadiens, second team. On the left side, Bobby Hull of the Chicago Blackhawks, his first team. Vic Hadfield of the New York Rangers, second team. And then we get to the Blue Liners. On defense, Bobby Orr of the Bruins is first team alongside Brad Park of the New York Rangers. And 2 Chicago Blackhawks are second team All-Stars, Bill White and Pat Stapleton, respectively. In net, Tony Esposito for the Chicago Blackhawks is your first team All-Star, and Ken Dryden of the Montreal Canadiens, your second team All-Star. So, in terms of scoring, Phil Esposito is the top guy. 76 games, 66 goals, 67 assists, 133 points. Bobby Orr, Bruins as well, of course, 76 games, 37 goals, 80 assists, 117 points. Because Bobby Orr. Jean Ratelle for the Rangers, 63 games, 46 goals, 63 assists, 109 points. And again, that goal-a-game line was 3-4-5. At 4, Vic Hadfield, 78 games, 50 goals, 56 assists, 106 points. And Rod Gilbert played 73 games, 43 goals, 54 assists, 97 points. Frank Mahovlich of the Montreal Canadiens, 76 games, 43 goals, 53 assists, 96 points. Bobby Hull of the Blackhawks, 78 games, 50 goals, 43 assists for 93 points. So another 50-goal season for Bobby Hull. In net, Ken Dryden goes 39, 8, and 15, 930 save percentage, 8 shutouts. Tony Esposito, 31, 10, and 6, 934 save percentage, and 9 shutouts. Jerry Cheevers in Boston, 27, 5, and 8 with a 920 save percentage, 2 shutouts. Eddie Johnston of the Bruins, 27-8-3, 899 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. And then we get to the playoffs. And in the playoffs, again, semifinals and finals. We'll go through each game. Quarterfinals, though, we just go through what happened. In the quarterfinals, St. Louis knocks out Minnesota in 7. So again, the Blues and the North Stars know each other very well throughout their history in the playoffs. And that has continued with the Blues and the Stars. So it's just that's the way it goes. And the Blues have won often. Chicago beats Pittsburgh in 4 straight. The Rangers beat Montreal in 6. And Boston beats Toronto in 5. Because back then, Boston knocked out Toronto. In the semifinals, the Rangers win both games in Chicago by scores of 3-2 and 5-3 respectively. And then they go home, they win 3-2 and 6-2 to win that series in 4 straight. The other side, you've got St. Louis and Boston. Boston destroys St. Louis in the first 2 games, 6-1 and 10-2. It goes to St. Louis from there. It doesn't get a lot better. Boston wins 7-2 and 5-3 to sweep that series and move on to a Stanley Cup final against the New York Rangers. Boston wins both games at home by scores of 6-5 and 2-1. Then the Rangers win at home 5-2. Boston wins in New York 3-2. New York then returns the favor, winning 3-2 in Boston, and Boston ends the series in 6, winning in New York 3-0. Because at this point, we don't have to worry about the circus anymore with Madison Square Garden, but Boston wins in Madison Square Garden in 6 and wins the Stanley Cup. In that Stanley Cup final, Ken Hodge, 5 goals, 3 assists. Bobby Orr, 4 goals, 4 assists. Phil Esposito had 8 assists in the final, so he didn't have a goal. He didn't need one. Johnny Busick only had a goal and 2 assists. Cheevers had a .901 save percentage. He was 2-1 in the series. Johnstone, .922 save percentage. He was 2-1 in the series as well. So it's an era where you can use both goaltenders in the Stanley Cup final. It's not a big deal. On the Rangers side of things, Gilbert, 4 goals, 3 assists in that final. Park had 2 goals and 4 assists, so it's a matchup between Bobby Orr and Brad Park, and Orr wins that. Irvine, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points. That's Ted Irvine. I believe that's Chris Jericho's dad. And Rattel only had 1 assist in that Stanley Cup final. Villemur had a .922 save percentage in the final. Jockerman had an .872 save percentage. Both goaltenders going 1 and 2 in the series. So there you go. The 71-72 season. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.